Chiefs news, analysis, and opinion every day. The Kansas City Chiefs defensive line had numerous problems last year, which all kind of culminated in the statistic that they dropped from the mid-50s in sacks that season all the way down to 39. In the two previous seasons, both, by the way, Super Bowl winning seasons, the Chiefs finished near the top of the NFL with sack numbers over that 50 per season mark. Falling all the way down to 39, though, the Chiefs had some work to do this offseason, and they've made a few acquisitions along the defensive line, including defensive tackle Omar Norman-Lott, defensive end Ashton Gillotte, and a UDFA in Coziah Izzard from Penn State that I think has a pretty decent opportunity to make this roster. But there is still the question of the edge position. PFF released an article titled "One Last Offseason Move for Every AFC Team," and this is what they say about the Kansas City Chiefs. Add more juice at edge defender. The Chiefs have been content to stay the course regarding their pass rush, but finding an upgrade on the edge would be a prudent move. Mike Danna isn't cutting it, having posted sub-60 PFF pass rush grades in 4 of his 5 seasons as a pro. Inserting a proven veteran option at the edge, such as Za'Darius Smith, would boost the unit across his past 3 seasons. Smith has generated a 90.1 PFF pass rush grade, placing him in the 93rd percentile. So what we're going to do a little bit today is look at some of the reasons why the Chiefs might not make that move, a move for another player at the edge position, and then we're going to end this video with something that I had not considered, which might be leading us to believe the Chiefs could make an acquisition at the edge position. Now, one of the things that I want to say here, not to be immediately contentious, but the PFF pass rush grade is not, in my opinion, the be-all, end-all. There is another thing to clear up before we get there. If you want to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and pass rush, well, you don't get to start at the edge position. You have to start with Chris Jones, who had an overall grade of 89.7, a pass rush grade of 91.0, a rush defense grade of 64.3, but even though he had a 91 pass rush grade, he ended with 6 sacks, a low number for a Chris Jones. Now, let's look at the edge position, the defensive end position for the Kansas City Chiefs. Leading that charge is George Karlaftis, who played a lofty 831 snaps last season, earning a 68.4 overall grade, a 69.5 pass rush grade, and a 56.6 run defense grade. This is another very good example of why I don't necessarily believe completely in the PFF numbers. George Karlaftis is solid against the run. Is he an absolute shutdown edge player? No, but he's solid there, contributing 8 sacks of his own along the way. George Karlaftis is a solidified number 1 defensive end. He's not an elite defensive end, but he is a solid number 1 defensive end. So you're not going to upgrade that spot. Likely number 2 on the Kansas City Chiefs depth chart right now, which means starting across from George Karlaftis, in my opinion, is still Mike Danna. 496 snaps last season, racked up 4 sacks along the way with a pass rush grade of 55.0, an overall grade of 64.9. That's not a bad number there. And a 65.6 run defense grade, having him 10 points better at stopping the run than the pass. One of the things that is underrated for Mike Danna because he came out the year he did and did not have an NFL combine or really a pro day is that Mike Danna is kind of a physical freak. You can look up his testing numbers. They are impressive for what you have. Now, mostly it's rumors and whispers of what Mike Danna is capable of, and we all know how that goes. Check Phil Steele's annual magazine for that story. So that is what it is, but Mike Danna's not a bad piece. Probably, however, he's a bad starter. I don't think that Mike Danna is a starting level edge player in the NFL. Going back to last season as well, the Kansas City Chiefs had Charles Omenihu, who in an abbreviated season played 225 snaps with an overall grade of 64.7, a pass rush grade of 60.1, and a run defense grade of 63.1 with just one sack on those 225 snaps. But you know as well as I do, this defense looks markedly different, markedly better with Charles Omenihu in the lineup versus not in the lineup. So having Charles Omenihu back for the Kansas City Chiefs this season is ultimately a boon, and it is something that makes the defense better. Now, it's possible Charles Omenihu outplays Mike Danna in camp and ends up as that second starting defensive end. There's one more name that could be on that list, and it's not the name you see at the bottom of your screen, at least at this point in my opinion. But Charles Omenihu, okay, so George Karlaftis back, probably the same. Mike Danna back, probably the same. Charles Omenihu on this depth chart offers the first opportunity for an improvement over last year simply by virtue of the fact that he will be on the field more, knock on wood. In his first two seasons in Kansas City, he's missed about a half a season with suspension and about a half a season with an injury. So we will see if he finally finds his way onto the field for a full 17. Now, we get an interesting name as far as could he improve. The question, could he improve, is concerned. But the first name here on this depth chart that I do not think is any real threat to start, that is FAU, still 22 years old, right? So there is some, 22 or 23, I can't remember, but there is upside for FAU still. Played 332 snaps last season with a 58.4 overall grade, a 60.5 pass rush grade, and a run defense grade of 56.3, adding 3 sacks in those 300 snaps. So basically 111 snaps per sack there. We go up here to Mike Danna. It's a little bit worse than that. 4 sacks on almost 500 reps. So he was playing more reps between sacks than was FAU. And then you have about 100 snaps per sack here for George Karlaftis, a little bit over. You've got 31 divided by 8. I'm no astrophysicist, so I don't think that quite gets you to 110 snaps per sack. So as far as pop per sack goes, George Karlaftis is 1, FAU is 2, Mike Danna is 3, and then Charles Omenihu, played all 225 of those snaps, accruing just 1 sack. Now, there was also the question of the reserve defensive end in Malik Herring, playing 193 snaps, getting a 60.2 overall grade, a 57.7 pass rush grade, a 62.1 run defense grade, and 0 sacks there. So 193 snaps, 0 sacks for Malik Herring. This is where you would hope someone would come off of the roster. This is where you would hope to start picking names off of the roster. Malik Herring has been around a long time. He was a UDFA. The question, of UDFA will come back later, but he was a UDFA. Also contributing last season was Joshua Uche. Played 87 snaps with Kansas City, but he played more snaps than that on the season. I don't think either of those sacks were during his time in Kansas City. A 54.9 overall grade, a 68.7 pass rush grade, a 70.2 run defense grade. These two numbers here, there's something telling NFL teams that something still exists with Joshua Uche. That's why he got another chance this offseason. He will be playing this year in Philadelphia at least through the preseason, through the 90-man cutdown day. But that was the final player sort of on the fringe of the roster, Joshua Uche. So if you can replace a Malik Herring, you get better on your defense. That is a fairly low bar for this defense. Now, who did the Kansas City Chiefs add? They added Janarius Robinson and Ashton Gillotte. Janarius Robinson might be a Joshua Uche level player. That's kind of what he has exhibited in his time in the NFL thus far. So, if nothing else, you just get to swap Janarius Robinson in for the Joshua Uche name right now, and maybe it's a wash. Joshua Uche, like I said, basically did nothing during his time in Kansas City, basically contributed nothing for this defense. It is hard to see why he was acquired. There were rumors at the time that it was a little bit of I don't want to say miscommunication, but a move that Steve Spagnuolo did not fully endorse, and Brett Veach said, screw it, we're going to try it anyway. That was the rumor. And look, as bad as that sounds, differences between your general manager and your defensive coordinator, as bad as that sounds, Brett Veach was doing something. Brett Veach said, hey, we've got to try something. Let's go get this guy who has, at least at times, flashed in the NFL. So he went out and got it done. Say what you will about the move, but look, part of the thing that has been very sort of, it makes me want to pull my hair out sometimes following this Kansas City Chiefs team, is that they've been so successful. And I understand the compulsion, but the question, why can't they just find a tackle? Well, guys, there's just not that many opportunities, right? Why can't they find a defensive end? There's just not that many opportunities. Why can't they find a defensive tackle to put next to Chris Jones? There's just not that many opportunities at any of those positions, and you factor in the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be pressed for cap space, so the free agency market is going to be difficult for a decade to come, hopefully, and they are picking 31st or 32nd basically every year. It's very difficult to acquire that type of talent at those positions. So, yeah, the Joshua Uche thing didn't work out. It's frustrating. Brett Veach went out and did what it was that he could. The Chiefs still got to the Super Bowl. Now, the other name there is Ashton Gillotte. Right now, in my opinion, Ashton Gillotte strikes me as a Mike Dana level player. That might not sound particularly promising after having just said that Mike Dana is not a starting level player. I mean, Ashton Gillotte might be a Mike Dana level player as a rookie. So obviously there's growth potential there. But when you start looking at this, you have Janarius Robinson knocking off Joshua Uche, and then you have everyone else shifting down a spot from, we'll place him right now between Charles Omenihu and Mike Dana. So Charles Omenihu becomes your fourth defensive end, FAU your fifth defensive end, and then you're knocking Malik Herring off of the roster or knocking Janarius Robinson off of the roster, and Malik Herring becomes your final defensive end. So I think that this is actually not a bad level of work for one offseason. They have cleaned up the bottom of the rotation, and they have added a guy towards what will probably be the top of the rotation there. I don't see anything in Ashton Gilotti's game that makes me think he cannot execute on level, on par with Mike Danna. And remember, I said FAU, his ceiling was Mike Danna coming out of college. I said that was his ceiling. He has not been Mike Danna thus far. So I think that this is not that that means that I am particularly a promising prognosticator, but I think that it's one of these things that you can kind of eyeball and see. And I think that is the truth there with Ashton Gilotti. He is a Mike Danna type player. I think he slots in around there. What is his ceiling? I don't quite know yet, but I think his ceiling is better than Mike Danna. So what is the evidence that maybe they're going to add another player at the edge position? Well, it is a little bit confusing because BJ Thompson is gone. I think we all kind of saw that coming. I don't know how someone goes through the medical trauma through which he went and continues to be a professional athlete in a contact sport. Truman Jones, a promising defensive end, I thought, that came in as a UDFA 2 seasons ago, is gone. Not on the 90-man. They did not sign a single UDFA at the edge position. Remember, I mentioned Keziah Izzard earlier. Keziah Izzard, I think, has an opportunity to crack that 53-man. He is an interesting type of defensive tackle. They didn't sign a single edge defensive end player as part of their UDFA process. I believe they have signed an edge player every season that Brett Veach has been the one picking up UDFAs. Now, didn't go back and check every one, but I just listed them in my mind. I could remember so many of them that I think it has always been the case. However, if you wanted to really get down to brass tacks, we all know that the Chiefs love to flip and flop their interior and exterior defensive linemen. So, maybe Omar Norman-Lott gets reps at edge. I'm inclined to think that he does not, but his presence might allow Chris Jones the added opportunities at the edge position. So right now, I am not sure where it is that the Chiefs are going at the edge position. Will they bring in another guy? Will they just go with who they have and know, in my opinion, that they have upgraded the position from last year? Another thing to consider here, there will be plenty of cuts from other teams from this point on. We already saw Jadeveon Clowney get cut. So there could still be a wave of talent at the edge position that could come in and knock off that bottom half of the Chiefs' edge group. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on the channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.